Hey everyone, welcome back to Educational Exploration Hub, the place where you will learn to build cloud projects. If you're new here, welcome, and I'm excited to have you here with us today. In today's episode, we're diving into creating a basic web application. So the prerequisites for this tutorial is to have beginners level AWS experience, an AWS account admin access level, and the cost of this project is eligible for free tier, and you will need a text editor of your choice. I'll be using a Sublime Text as my choice of text edit, and by the end of this tutorial you'll have a fully functional web application on AWS. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. It really helps us out and ensures you don't miss any of our weekly tutorials. And if you find this video helpful, share it with a friend who might enjoy it too. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. So for this web application project, here is a brief overview of the architecture of what it would look like once we've done it and how they've all interlinked with each other. So for this step, we'll need to copy and paste some HTML codes into our text editor. So I'll be linking this HTML file in the description box below. So I'll be copying and pasting my HTML file, my HTML into this text editor and saving it somewhere safe, as we'll be uploading it onto AWS further on. So once the index.html file has been saved, we'll then need to compress it into a zip file and save that for future use. So now back into the AWS console, we'll then navigate to AWS Amplify. So you can search that in the search box to be able to get that up if you haven't already got it. And also the region we'll be using will be US West 2. So we're going to click on Get Started and then navigate down to Host Your Web App and click on Get Started there. And we'll be deploying without a GitHub provider, and then click on Continue. And for this, we'll be using the drag and drop method, and we can then choose the file we saved. So the compressed file we saved earlier. So we're going to drag and drop into this box here. And then save and deploy. So the deployment has been successfully completed. So now to test our app, we just need to copy this into a different domain. And here is what it should open up as once you've clicked on the link. Hello world. And here is what the architecture looks like right now. So we've done the AWS Amplify. So this stage is pretty much minimal. And because we're only using AWS Amplify, we now have a live web app user can interact with. So next we'll create a Lambda function. So on to the next stage. What we'll be doing now is building a serverless function. So we're going to be creating a Lambda function from scratch using the AWS console, and we'll be using Python. And then also we'll be creating an event to test our function using JSON. So I will go into my search tab here to search for Lambda. And then I'll open this in a new tab. And also to make sure we select the right region. So we're using US West 2. So that's been selected. And then next is to click on the create a function. And we're going to be creating this using author from scratch. And then to create a function name, you can select a function name. So for me, I'm going to choose hello world function. And then for the runtime, we're going to be using Python 3.8. And then for the architecture, I'm just going to leave as default and everything else as default. And then we can just click on create function. and you should see a green message at the top once it's successfully created. So that's now been successfully created. So under the code section of the Lambda function we've just created, so I'll be replacing the Lambda function.py with this code. And then I'll go to the file section here just to save what we've just added in. And that should give you a green tick to say that it's been saved successfully. And then also we need to click on deploy, so that would deploy our changes. And again, up here it's successfully updated the function. So now that's been done, so now we just need to test our function. So we can just click on this button here to test the function. So in order to configure the test function, we need to give our event name a name. So I'm going to choose Hello World Test Event, and also I'll be linking a JSON file for this in the description as well. So we'll be changing the JSON file in here. So I'll be replacing this text in here with this, and then click on save. So now back to the code section here, and we'll just need to click on test to test our function, and we should receive the test event name as hello world test event, and the response should give us a status code of 200, and obviously the body as hello from Lambda Ada Lovelace. And yeah, the status here showed it's succeeded, so that's good. So that section's done, and this is what our architecture should look like. So obviously we've done our AWS Amplify, and now we've done AWS Lambda. So you will notice that we've added a Lambda service to the diagram, but it does not yet have a connection to it. So now we just need to build that on the next stage. So now I'm going to go into my search box and search for Amazon API Gateway. And then I'll open that in a new tab. So in this section, we're going to create an Amazon gateway to create a RESTful API that will allow us to make calls to our Lambda function from a web client. So API gateway will act as a middle layer between the HTML clients we created and the serverless backend we created previously. So in this section, we're going to choose our API. So the API we need is REST API. And then we click on build. So under the REST API, we're going to use the new API, and we're going to give our API a name. So my API name will be Hello World API. And then description, I'm just going to leave as default. API endpoint type, edge optimized. And then we're just going to click on create API. So on the next stage, what we're going to do now is click on this and make sure the resource, so this slash bit is selected, and then we need to click on create method, and then for the method type we need to click on post, and Lambda function is what we're going to be using as the integration type. And then for the region, we need to use the region that we've been working in, so that has been US West 2, so that is what is selected here. So we just need to ensure that's what's been selected, and then our Lambda function that we created earlier should appear here, so we can just click on that. And what we need to do next is just click on create method, and that has now successfully been created. So now that we have created a post method, so the next stage is to enable calls. So we're going to click on enable calls here. So the method we're going to be choosing here is post, and then leaving everything else as they are, and then click on save. So at this stage, we now need to deploy API. And for the stage, we're going to choose new stage. And then for the stage name, we're going to choose dev. We're going to type in dev and then click on deploy. So once that's been done, all I'm going to do now is copy our URL, as we're going to be needing that later. So I'm just going to put that away safely. So what we're going to be doing next now is we're going to go to our resources. So what we need to do now is to click on post. So once we've clicked on the post, we need to head over to test, and then this will bring us down. So we've got the test method, the query strings, but what we need is the request body, and I'm going to paste in some JavaScript into this place. And again, I'll be linking this in the description box. And once we've done that, we click on test. So that has brought us a status code of 200, which is great. So we've built and tested an API that calls our Lambda function. And this is what our architecture should look like. So now we have added the API gateway and connected it to our existing Lambda function. So now we can trigger our function with an API call. So we're still missing the ability to generate this call from our web client. So we'll add the data table. So now I'm going to head over back into our search and search for DynamoDB. I'm going to open this in a new link, in a new tab. So at this stage, what we are going to be doing is creating a DynamoDB using our AWS console, and we're creating a role and manage permissions with IAM, and we're going to be writing a DynamoDB table using AWS SDK. So what I'll be using is mainly Python. And again, just to point out that we also need to make sure we've selected the right region. So still on US West 2. So what we're going to do now is create a table. So click on create table, and the name of our table. So the name of my table would be Hello World Database. And the partition key, it will be ID, and leave this as string. So I'm going to leave the rest as default, and then click on the create table. So our table has been created successfully. So once we've clicked into our table, we are going to need to copy our ARN, so our Amazon resource name. So that should be here. So I'm just going to copy this and save this for later because we're going to be using it later on. So now that we've got our table created, we need to go back into our Lambda function to be able to write data to it. So I'm just going to head back over to the tab I got open for my Lambda, and then select, so basically just go back to the function and then select the function we've created. So what we'll be doing now is adding permissions to our function so we can use the DynamoDB service, and we will be using AWS identity and access management to do so. So into the configuration, and then we need to select permissions just on the left hand corner. So I'm going to click on this link here, so under the role name. So this should open in a new browser, and that should lead us to our IAM. So in this section here, the permissions policy, I'm going to click on the add permission. So what we need is to create an inline policy. So click on inline policy and select JSON. So in this policy editor, I'm going to paste in the JSON text. I will be linking this in the description box. So for this section here, so we're going to be replacing the resource with the ARN we selected earlier. So I'm just going to go back to where I've saved mine and place it in. So this policy will allow our Lambda function to read, edit, and delete items, but restrict it to only be able to do so in the table we created. So once we've done that, we can click on next, and then for the policy name, I'll be using Hello World Dynamo Policy, and then click on create policy. So once that's done, we can go back to our Lambda function. So go back onto code, and we'll be replacing the text in here with a Python code. So I'll be linking that as well in the description box. So I'll be replacing this text with this one. Click on deploy, so that saves our changes. So now what we're going to do is test our function. So click on test, and that has executed successfully. So obviously you can see the status here. It says succeeded, and we've got our test event name hello world test, and our status code as 200, which has been updated successfully. So now back to our DynamoDB tab. So we go on to tables and then explore items. So once we're here, hello world database has been selected, and then the items here for the table, so hello world database has been selected, and the items returned are what we've used earlier. So that's correct. So every time your Lambda function executes, your DynamoDB table will be updated. So if the same name is used, only the timestamp will change. And here is what the architecture looks like right now. So we've added two services in this section. So we have DynamoDB and IAM. So both are connected to our Lambda function, so that it can write to our database. So the final step is to add code to our client to call the API gateway. So for this section, I'm just going to head back over to the tab I had opened earlier for API gateway. And before we move on to that, the Index.html file we created at the beginning, we're going to replace the existing code with the following code. So for this as well, I will be linking the updated code in the description box. So I'm just going to go ahead and update my code. So I'm just going to replace this code here. So I've now replaced my code, and on line 41 we need to replace the your API invoke URL with the URL link we saved previously. So we just need to go back and fetch that. So I'm just going to go and fetch mine. So I'll be replacing mine here. And then saving it. And then also we need to compress the file as well. So go back to where we've saved it and then ensure to compress the file. So once our HTML file has been saved and we've compressed it, so we then need to go back to our AWS Amplify. So I've still got that tab open, and then we need to replace the file that we've just created in here. So choose file and ensure to select the compressed file. So the deployment has been successfully completed. So now for us to test our domain, so we need to click on the link, either click on it or copy it. So I'm just going to click on it so it'll open up, and it has opened up into another tab, and we've got first name with a box, last name, and then called API. So we can now fill in the name we used earlier. And then call API. And there we go. So we have our message which says, hello from Lambda, Ada Lovelace. So congratulations, you now have a working web app deployed by Amplify console that can call a Lambda function via API gateway. And this is what the architecture should look like. So all the AWS services we set up can securely communicate with each other. When a user chooses a button in the web app, it makes a call to our API, which triggers the Lambda function. Our Lambda function writes a database and returns a message to our client via API gateway. IAM manages all the permissions. So congratulations, you've successfully built a web application on AWS. So what we'll be doing next now is to clean up our resources. So I will be walking you through how to clean up the resources we've used. So in order for you not to incur any charges, I know these are services that are free within the free tier. Obviously, if you're not in the free tier, then you might get a charge. So we can go through this together and clean up our resources. So I'm going to go back to my DynamoDB tab and then go on tables and then just click into that and click on delete. And then to confirm deletion, we just need to type in confirm and then delete. And the request to delete our table has been submitted successfully. So now on to API gateway. So into our API and select that and then click on delete and also confirm delete in here as well. And that's been deleted successfully as well. So the next one will be our Lambda function. So if we go into our Lambda and then just go into the function and then click on the function and click on delete. And we also need to confirm deletion here as well. So that's also been successfully deleted. And we need to go into our Amplify. So into AWS Amplify. So once we're in this section, we can just go into the actions and click on delete app and then confirm deletion here as well. So delete. And that has now been deleted. So there we go. So all our services have now been deleted. So we've pretty much cleaned up all the resources we've used. And there you have it. You have successfully built a web application on AWS. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and that you are feeling more confident about starting the next project. Now I want to hear from you. Do you have any questions about what we covered? Let me know down in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have. Don't forget, practice makes perfect. So go out there and start having a play around in the console. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who would find it helpful. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you never miss our tutorials. Until next time, keep building and I'll see you in the next video.